Right, so welcome back to another video on this channel. A double upload for you guys today. Don't say I don't spoil you, but yeah, Patrick Vieira has just been sacked as the Crystal Palace manager in the last few hours, and yeah, in this video I'm going to be giving you my instant reactions, my thoughts on whether it was the right decision or not to sack Patrick Vieira and dismiss him of his duties, and then of course going through what is next for Crystal Palace between now and the end of the season and beyond, who they appoint as their new manager, and can they avoid a potential relegation battle that they do currently find themselves in with the poor run of form they have been on since the turn of the World Cup. So yeah, let's just get straight into it. So first and foremost, my opinions. Should Patrick Vieira have been sacked as Crystal Palace manager? Is it a vindicated decision by the Crystal Palace hierarchy to dismiss him of his duties? And to be fair, I think it's a really weird one of the weirdest ones I've seen in quite some time in terms of formulating my opinion on this one, just given the fact that I still, to this hour, can't decide whether he was actually rightfully sacked or not, to be fair. And look, I look at it from both sides of the coin. If you look at the positives of why he maybe shouldn't have been sacked, he guided Crystal Palace through, a transitional phase last season where they were, coming off the back of Roy Hodgson, who was, who'd left the club, playing more of a conservative brand of football. There was a lot of, older players who had left the club on free transfers and left the club in general. A lot of young players came in, a whole transitional phase of changing the style of play with a lot of new players, which Patrick Vieira, to be fair to him, did do well in doing so last season and getting Palace through that. And then this season, they started off the season quite well. They were in and around mid-table where Crystal Palace normally are, and then ever since the second half of the season, where after the World Cup, it's just gone downhill like you would not believe for Crystal Palace so far since the World Cup. They've only won one game post-World Cup, which was away at Bournemouth in late December. They've now had 12 winless games, and yeah, it's just been absolutely treacherous for Crystal Palace. And it is a run that leaves them currently 3 points above the Premier League drop zone, which in fairness I think just shows how competitive the Premier League has been at the bottom of the league, particularly this season, given the fact that Palace, although they are 3 points above the relegation zone and one defeat the way other results going their way, you'd think theoretically could have them in the relegation places, but they are currently still 12th in the Premier League as well, which, like I said, just showcases how competitive and how dramatic it's been at the bottom half of the Premier League table this season. But they do still of course find themselves in a relegation battle, given the fact they are only, like I said, 3 points above the drop zone currently. And that's why I say, from the other half of the perspective, when Vieira maybe could have been sacked, is just a run like that in the Premier League is just absolutely abysmal really, and it's in some terms unforgivable, as is evident in this situation where he has lost his job. And I think it's just a classic case of the Crystal Palace hierarchy panicking, given the form they've been on and given the fact that, as I said, they are in danger of relegation as according to the Premier League table. And that's why I think they've panicked a little bit. They've jumped the gun and they've just said, you know what, we need to get ourselves out of danger here. And yeah, Patrick Vieira and Crystal Palace were going on a downward spiral very, very quickly. 3 games without a shot on target they went on before that Brighton game during the week, which is just absolutely unbelievable. A new Premier League record, a very unwanted Premier League record at that. And yeah, just a few more stats just to show how poor Crystal Palace have been, particularly offensively this season. Not only just in the second half of the season since the turn of the World Cup, they're averaging the lowest expected goals from open play this season so far overall, 15.56. And in terms of the goals they've scored, 12 from open play and 8 from set pieces, which really does show that from open play they really are struggling to find the back of the net. They're the 4th lowest for average possession this season, 43.6%, and just to put that into context, they've got lower possession stats than Southampton and Everton this season overall. And they've got the 16th best conversion rate in the Premier League this season of 7.46%, which does show that they haven't been clinical in front of goal whatsoever. And I think that's one of the main reasons why Palace have been so poor this season, is the lack of striker and the lack of a few profiles in this team overall. And that's one thing I will cut Patrick Vieira a bit of slack for, because if you look at how Patrick Vieira wants this Crystal Palace team to set up under his guidance, they want to set up under a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1. He does like to hit teams on the break ideally, but his Palace team are very comfortable on the ball as well when they want to be. They're 15th in the Premier League this season for average sequence time, which is 7.77 seconds per sequence, and they're 15th as well for passes per sequence, averaging just under 3 at 2.99 passes per sequence. So yeah, ideally they did want to hit teams on the break, and they do press from the front, which obviously the likes of Mateta, Zaha, Elise, Eze, Jordan Ayew, whoever is playing up front in that front four, so to speak, at the time will press from the front. And like I said, if the press is beaten, they will drop down into a low block and putting 10 or 11 men behind the ball, and then soaking up pressure and hitting teams on the break. And obviously they've really struggled with that this season, given the fact that, of course, they've only scored 21 goals in the Premier League this season, with only 12 of them being from open play. Hey there, why are you not subscribed, huh? Unless you are, in which case just ignore this message. According to the stats, nearly 80% of you aren't subscribed to this channel. What the f***'s that about, huh? Subscribe! and leave a like while you're at it as well. Cheers. Love ya. And look, if you just go through, you know, what Patrick Vieira's preferred lineup was at Crystal Palace so far this season, you look at Vicente Guaita in goal. He's a decent shot stopper. He's not a bad goalkeeper by any stretch of the imagination, Guaita. He's getting on a little bit, and maybe Crystal Palace and Patrick Vieira specifically would have wanted someone a little bit more modern in goal. They've got a decent back four in terms of Tyrick Mitchell, obviously, you know, very good defensively, even though he's having a poor time this season, I think it's fair to say. Mark Gahey and Joachim Anderson, who, you know, possess a very balanced centre-back partnership in terms of Gahey being that aggressor and winning the ball back mainly, and obviously Joachim Anderson doing the same, but also being able to, you know, ping balls forward, which is very handy for counter-attacking teams. You've got Sheikh Doucouré in that 6th role, who's obviously been a very good signing for Crystal Palace this season in terms of the energy, the tenacity he offers in that Crystal Palace midfield, and he's obviously well able to win the ball back as well. You've got Jeff Schlupp in that box-to-box midfielder role, so to speak, and obviously someone like Ahamada, the new signing, or Sambi Lokonga in there as well. Eberechi Eze in that 10 role, playing as also almost that advanced playmaker role, and starts off deep, but obviously is very capable of carrying the ball forward in a counter-attacking sequence. You've got Elise on the right, who obviously is more prone to cutting in his left foot and obviously delivering balls into the box for someone like Mateta up front. You've got Zaha on the left, who's given a little bit more license to be direct and, you know, go at defenders. And then you've got Mateta up front, who has really struggled this season. I'm fairly sure he's only got like 1 goal in the Premier League this season, and that, yeah, has really struggled in front of goal. And yeah, that's why I just think that Patrick Vieira was missing just a few more pieces of the puzzle in terms of, first of all, a goalkeeper, like I said, someone who's a little bit more modern. They're in desperate need of a right back, I think it's fair to say, especially given the fact they do like to play with this elbow tactic, which of course means that one of the fullbacks does go forward with the attack, while the other one shifts into make a back three with Mark Gahey and Joachim Anderson when in possession, and I think Joel Ward and Nathaniel Klein, no disrespect to the two of them, they've both had good Premier League careers, but I think it's fair to say they're both kind of, you know, outgrown in this Palace system, so to speak, and yeah, it's clear to see they need a striker because Jean-Philippe Mateta is having a really poor time at this moment in time. Alton Edouard obviously hasn't hit the ground running whatsoever in a Palace shirt yet, and in terms of a striker, they need someone with obviously hold-up play to put himself about, but also be able to link up play and be a focal point while also, you know, chipping in for goals himself, which Mateta hasn't really been able to achieve so far for Crystal Palace in recent years. I mean, he does have decent hold-up play, and obviously he does put himself about given the fact he is a physical presence, but in terms of his link-up play and obviously, you know, in terms of his output in front of goal, it's not been the best, I think it's fair to say, and that's why, well, one of the reasons why anyway Patrick Vieira has struggled, and one of the main reasons why I feel like he has been sacked is because of those, you know, 3 or 4 profiles of players that he has been lacking in this Palace team. And then it doesn't help whatsoever when you have your kingpin in the team, Wilfried Zaha, the main man, the main threat going forward. When he gets injured halfway through the season, and then when he comes back from injury, he has a loss of form, and yeah, it's clear to see that when Zaha is not on his game, Crystal Palace are a completely different team and lack a lot of threat going forward. So I do think there's a few elements there, like I've listed there, that could, you know, indicate that maybe Patrick Vieira was quite unfortunate to lose his job in total. So I think in conclusion, I think the definitive answer we get on whether or not Patrick Vieira should have been sacked by Crystal Palace or not, I think will be largely based on how his successor does between now and the end of the season and beyond, of course. Because I think if he does really poorly, and, you know, I think then Patrick Vieira does have a case to say, you know what, maybe he was unfairly sacked. But then at the same time, I think if his successor comes in and does an absolutely brilliant job at Crystal Palace, I think then you might have your answer in terms of the fact that maybe it was the right decision. So I think it does come down a lot to how well his successor does in that Crystal Palace post overall, in terms of my opinion on whether or not I think it was the right decision or not to sack him. From what I understand, I think Ralph Hasenhüttl is the current favourite for the job, and I'd like to do a little bit more research on how Hasenhüttl's profile would suit Crystal Palace, but he would be an interesting one, Ralph Hasenhüttl, and I think he was very harshly sacked by Southampton, especially looking at it from hindsight with Nathan Jones and how he did. I've seen Marcelo Bielsa linked, I've seen Rafa Benitez linked, Carlos Corberán's been linked, who I think would be a very young, exciting option, but I don't think he'll leave West Brom. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see who Crystal Palace do hire in the next few weeks. I don't understand whatsoever the sacking in terms of the timing of it, because Paddy McCarthy, who's a previous Crystal Palace player in the Championship especially, he is taken over for this game against Arsenal on Sunday, so I don't really understand in terms of the fact they've sacked Patrick Vieira without a real plan in place to replace him, and I think it once again shows in that you know, they have rushed into this sacking overall. But yeah, Crystal Palace fans, you will know more on this situation more than I will. Should Patrick Vieira have been sacked, and was it a vindicated decision by the Crystal Palace board? Do let me know in the comment section below. I'm really interested, you know, hear you guys' opinions on that one. And yeah, leave a like on the video if you did enjoy it, would be massively appreciated, and also if you could subscribe to the channel as well, that would also be hugely appreciated. We are looking to hit 2,000 subscribers on this channel as soon as we possibly can, so every single one of you that hits that subscribe button will be an absolute legend and help me get there as soon as possible. And yeah, I'll chat to you guys in my next video, and yeah, chat to you later.